And perfect.
No, you can bugger off, mate. Go on. I'll quick it a bit.
um, yes. And just checking, this one here is all green?
It's all great.
Perfect. Sounds good. Well,
You're when you start recording.
yeah, it's all good. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to say welcome, everyone. And thank you so much for taking some time, an hour out of your busy days, to talk about a subject that really is so important. Nearly 1.1 billion women around the world are currently experiencing this, so definitely not a small number. And every single woman in her lifetime, if she makes it to this age, will experience it as well, which is obviously menopause. And to give a little introduction to myself, my name is Victoria Harris, and what allows me to speak about menopause with such confidence is I'm a menopause coaching specialist. I have a bachelor's degree in education. I'm a registered nutritionist with the Nutrition Council of Australia. I have backgrounds further in functional blood work analysis, personal training, epigenetics coaching, and I'm currently a fellow at Victoria University teaching health and physical education. So as you can see from my list of credentials, I have a shopping addiction. and that shopping addiction is very expensive, actually, in regards to education. So the next time you bring home an expensive pair of shoes back and your husband says, "What is this?" You say, "Don't worry about it. My menopause coach, you should see what she brings home. Much more expensive. Fancy pieces of paper with her name on it." But past my credentials, more important than that list, I am a daughter whose mother went through menopause in a way that truly changed her life forever. And we're going to talk about that story and what kind of ignited my passion for menopause in the first place. So I think when we traditionally think about menopause, we generally think about the cliche symptoms we hear on TV. Generally, two pop up the most. It's hot flushes, as well as mood swings. You kind of see those ones in high rotation. And when we think about TV shows like That 70s Show, have you guys seen that one with Kitty? It's nice to have a good laugh every once in a while, but the reality is menopause is so much more than the cliches that we see on TV. There's actually 60 different symptoms associated with the menopause experience, and the reality is 1 in 10 women find their symptoms so severe, they feel the need to quit their job. So yes, once in a while, having a good laugh at a hot flush is fine, but the reality is the severity of these symptoms is really so much more and potentially a health crisis for some women. And to kind of explain my own passion that ignited through menopause through my mom's journey, this is a bit of my mom's story when she went through her transition. So my mom's menopause was so much more than the cliches. She was struggling with sleep. She was a nurse working in the intensive care unit, just struggling to get a minimum of 5 hours per night. She was also dealing with a constant battle with her weight. So this was my mom when she was younger than me in what I like to call her premenopausal era. And this was the year that she turned menopause nearly 30 kilos heavier. And it's not something that's uncommon, women experiencing significant weight gain during this time. She was also experiencing a lack of motivation to exercise, so having no energy, feeling depleted, and just having no motivation to move. Painful periods as she was progressing through perimenopause, really heavy periods, heavy clotting in her bleeding. She was also diagnosed during this time as a type 2 diabetic, as well as high blood pressure, as well as high cholesterol to compound all of that, and being medicated for it. So not just those symptoms, but also experiencing intense menopause symptoms was a true catalyst for my mom's health journey. Unfortunately, the year my mom turned menopausal, the combination of weight gain, as well as what you'll learn today, a drop in bone density, sent my mom into the doctor's office complaining about lower back pain. The doctor did an assessment on her spine. He said, "Oh, you have a few bulging discs, combination of you gaining weight during the menopause experience. I recommend you getting your spine fused by putting rods in the back of your spine and fusing the discs." So my mom went into surgery thinking she was going to come out on the other end being completely okay. After they fused her spine, the physio was rotating her in the bed, and menopause also creates a drop in bone density, what we'll learn today, giving you a risk of osteopenia. And unfortunately, as my mom was being rotated in the bed post-surgery, she ended up experiencing a fracture of the spine that left her a paraplegic the year that she turned postmenopausal. And that was something that obviously changed her life for the worst, and it also really impacted our family life as well. And even though my mom's story is a tragedy and what I believed if she had the correct medical intervention could have been truly prevented, she is actually one of my proudest transformations. Through the knowledge that I built in nutrition and menopause, I was able to help my mom reclaim her energy, reverse her type 2 diabetes, because that is possible, lose over 20 kilos, which made her wheelchair transfer so much more manageable. And you can see that before photo with the inflammation clinging onto my mom's face, to that after image of my mom being able to actually fit into a brand new electric wheelchair and have the mobility to move around. So as you can see, when it comes to menopause, it's not something to take lightly. It truly can be a health crisis for some women. And when it comes to how we're going to be addressing menopause symptoms today, we're going to be looking at holistic ways to treat menopause. But a question that I do get asked a lot is, what about HRT? And we're going to be talking about how we can address menopause with HRT, but also with holistic treatment too. So looking at HRT, is there anybody who doesn't know what this term is or has never heard of it before? Okay, well, it sounds like everybody has, which is good. And if you haven't, that's okay. And if you haven't raised your hand, it's totally fine. But I like to provide basic information because the reality is what I'm trying to discuss with you today is really simple and practical terminology as well as education so that you can use these in open discussions, not only with your friends, but with your healthcare providers. And to give you some background on what HRT is, and as a functional nutritionist, what I think about it too, HRT stands for hormonal replacement therapy. It's also known as MHT, menopause hormonal therapy. And why it's used is it's helped to treat and relieve specific menopause symptoms, like vasomotor symptoms like hot flushes and night sweats, as well as vaginal dryness. And what HRT does is it replaces hormones that the body no longer produces, such as estrogen, progesterone, as well as testosterone, and can be delivered as oral tablets, skin patches, gels, creams, or vaginal pessaries. And the reality is, people do ask me, what is your opinion on HRT? What are your thoughts? Because some women feel like they would not want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And other women say, this is going to be the fountain of youth. It's going to change my life forever. And this is my opinion as a functional nutritionist in regards to HRT. I want to highlight HRT as a tool, and it is a powerful tool, but it is only one tool in your toolbox. And I'll explain how you can actually, or how I utilize HRT in my own practice. So number one, I help women understand if HRT is the right tool for them based off of their symptoms as well as their medical history. Because the reality is not all women actually are able to take HRT or recommended to take it, whether they have a history of breast cancer, they have a family history of it, or potentially a history of strokes or aneurysms. I have also clients who've taken HRT and they don't tolerate it very well. And we'll kind of talk later on why that is the case. I also help women have better conversations with their doctors to make sure they have the right dosage, because HRT isn't just a one-size-fits-all prescription. HRT is labeled as systemic, which can be circulated through the bloodstream. There's other forms of HRT, which is non-systemic, which is localized therapy. And both of them have different risk factors. And dosages are really important because we can get adverse side effects in regards to HRT usage. And that's why I check blood work to see if proper estrogen clearance is happening. Because women metabolize estrogen differently based off of their genetics. And the reality is estrogen is water soluble. When it's dissolved by our liver, it can actually be reuptaked by our large intestine and recirculated through our body. Estrogen is actually a growth-based hormone. And if we have recycled estrogen, we can get heavier breasts, bigger breasts. We can also experience heavier periods, more blood clotting during peri. And I currently have a client who is working with her doctor as well as me to find the right doses of HRT because she's getting this estrogen dominance and getting severe migraines and headaches. So making sure that we're actually able to metabolize estrogen properly, and there's nutritional ways to do that, is something that I do in my practice. Now, when it comes to HRT, as I mentioned, it is only one tool in the toolbox. And I wish it was the fountain of youth and it would cover all 60 symptoms that menopause can bring up. But the reality is that is not the case. The organized body, the Australasian Menopause Society, actually put out a statement in regards to misinformation regarding menopause and the symptoms associated with it. They address in their statement that HRT is fantastic for vasomotor-based symptoms, so for hot flushes and for night sweats. It's also really good for issues regarding vaginal dryness. But they wrote in their statement in misinformation, these are areas that HRT potentially may not cover, as well as what HRT does not cover. So HRT may potentially not cover brain fog, low libido, and fatigue and energy levels. And the reason being is, yes, when we have a drop in estrogen, it can potentially affect our cognitive pathways. But if we're dealing with low-lying symptoms of, let's say, gut-based issues, this area may not be fully resolved. Low libido, testosterone-based therapy specifically addresses this. But also the reality is I have clients who are currently on testosterone therapy and they have no libido because their stress levels are in overdrive, and that actually needs to be addressed. Fatigue and energy levels, so feeling like you just have no energy throughout the day, potentially can be addressed at the beginning as estrogen begins to decline. But again, long-term issues of chronic stress, low cortisol, dysregulation of our HPA axis can leave this area unaddressed. And HRT specifically doesn't cover joint pain, weight gain, digestive-based issues and bloating, and hair thinning and skin changes. And as you can see in the statement, it continues, it should not be used as a primary prevention of cardiovascular disease, as well as musculoskeletal conditions like arthritis and frozen shoulder. And the reality is, these are symptoms that women come to me all the time, thinking that HRT may potentially address them, or going to their doctor seeking for help and assistance, and they're unfortunately left being gaslit with no solutions. And that's why I do things differently in my own practicing clinic. And the statistics really highlight the nature in regards to how women are generally feeling about treatment for menopause. So about 1 in 4 women don't feel comfortable talking about menopause. 1 in 10, as I already mentioned, said their symptoms leave them feeling so debilitated they've considered leaving work. And 85% of women say they've sought treatment, and unfortunately they've been ignored. And again, that's why I do things differently in my own clinic. And for my own approach in regards to helping women with menopause, yes, we can utilize HRT as a tool, but again, it is only one tool. And I focus on things like functional nutrition, which looks at blood work analysis to understand what your root cause is, genetics to triage this information as well, and holistic strategies. Because every woman's journey when it comes to menopause is so different and specifically unique to them. So what we're going to be doing today is I designed this seminar to be really practical so that the tools that you're able to utilize, you can take and use in the conversations you have with friends as well as healthcare providers. And we're going to be looking at, number 1, Menopause 101, terminology that we can utilize to speak about menopause in our transition with confidence, an activity to help you find your root cause, holistic treatment, as well as functional blood work if that's something that you're interested in a journey for and other resources regarding that. And then a Q&A, because there's generally lots of questions regarding this transition and what to expect. So I want to give you a heads up, as we're going to dive into this topic of menopause and some of the terminology, I am going to quiz you at the end, because I am a teacher by nature. So I just want you to have your minds just switched on. So when I ask you some retention questions, we'll see if it's stuck. So I want to just share, first of all, what I actually thought about menopause before this journey, before I had any of the education that I do now. So before I had any of this education, I thought menopause was one day in time, and what a glorious day it was going to be, right? And you're laughing, but honestly, I thought the end of my period, how exciting is that? Like breaking the chains of it. But the reality is my perception of menopause was that way because no one spoke about it. Everybody was completely silent. My mom didn't talk about it until obviously things were too late. But when we understand the stages and eras of menopause, the reality is the symptoms start to make so much more sense. So let's go ahead and look at the stages regarding this period of time. We're going to look at the lens of menopause by rewinding back, and we're going to highlight this as our premenopausal era. This is where girls move from childhood to puberty, and they experience the onset of menstruation, and a healthy cycle is around that 21 to 32 day mark and period. From there, after premenopause, we enter perimenopause. So if you've never heard of this term before, and has anybody not heard of it, perimenopause before? You guys are all, well, yeah, you just one. I'm surprised there's not more. I think some of you are like having your hands to the side. because the stats say nearly 80% of women have never heard this term before until a doctor has told them that they're in it. So perimenopause itself is the onset transition to menopause. And why this happens in the first place, because as women, we're born with a finite number of eggs. We have about 300 to 400,000 eggs upon conception. And through each menstrual cycle, we end up losing a certain amount. And by the time that we enter perimenopause, our eggs are at a critically low state. And that's where we start to see that decline in sex hormones. Now, perimenopause itself is generally when we have the onset of these pesky symptoms as well. I actually had someone say, I didn't think I would get any symptoms until I was postmenopause, but that's definitely not the reality. You can start experiencing these symptoms up to 5 to 10 years before. Now, after perimenopause comes menopause, and when it comes to the clinical diagnosis of menopause, you have to go 365 days without a period to be clinically diagnosed as such. So let's say you went 9 months, no menstrual cycle, then it decides to pop up again. You have to restart your 365-day calendar to actually be diagnosed as menopausal. And menopause itself is technically only 1 day in time. After menopause comes postmenopause, the day directly after, and this is the period following you the rest of your life. So as I mentioned, I was going to quiz you guys and see how much this stuck. So to be clinically diagnosed as menopause, how long do you have to go without a menstrual cycle? 365 days. So yes, some of you guys are listening, which is fantastic. 365 days without a period. And why do I have the numbers 45 to 51? Because this is a general age range that women can actually go through this experience itself. And when the phase before menopause, what is that phase called that nearly 80% of women have never heard that term before? Peri, 100%. So perimenopause, you guys are going to get an A on the quiz. And perimenopause symptoms can start up to 5 to 10 years before. So that's why when we're advertising this seminar, we're encouraging women 35 plus. And the reality is this is an average. It is not necessarily the standard that everybody goes through. Sadly enough, my childhood best friend, she has been diagnosed, years ago was diagnosed with endometriosis and is going through a hysterectomy. And she is in her early 30s at the moment. So moving from menopause, what is the phase after? Postmenopause, 100%. So postmenopause is a phase that sticks with you for the rest of your life. And the question I wanted to ask you guys is, do the symptoms disappear after you hit postmenopause? Is that the finish line? Is that the closing door? No, it's definitely not the case. You're absolutely right. Does anybody have a guess of how long these symptoms could potentially last? Up to your 70s? I hear forever. Any other guesses? Your lifespan, 100%. So the science shows at the moment that symptoms in regards to menopause can last up to 20 years for some. And that's why, I know this is generally the time in the seminar where everybody's like, oh my gosh, big sighs, big groans. And I really want to highlight this because so many women do think that menopause is a closing door. Like they think that is the finish line. Once I pass this finish line, all these issues that I'm experiencing, the hot flushes, the night sweats, the weight gain, the brain fog, it's all just going to evaporate and disappear. And it is not the case. The stats say that it's not the case. And that's why it's so important to highlight, because if we're dealing with symptoms now, it's really important to address them because we don't want to be suffering with hot flushes and night sweats when we're 70 years old. So yes, a combination of holistic therapy, whether it's holistic or medical therapy, can be beneficial to your journey, and it is really important to start reaching out now. And when it comes to menopause and the transition, I just highlighted natural menopause, but the reality is there's other forms of menopause itself. There is surgical menopause, which occurs when the ovaries are removed and it triggers an instant menopause. And I want to highlight this because the severity of symptoms are generally much more intense. You're basically thrown into menopause overnight. As well as medical menopause, where if you've experienced chemotherapy, it damages the ovaries and it induces a faster onset. But I do want to highlight for men who have gone through this, the holistic treatment does remain the same. The hormonal therapy actually does differ based off of if you're going to get estrogen therapy, progesterone. Estrogen therapy only is generally what's recommended if you've had these issues. So moving on from the types of menopause, we're actually going to jump into an activity today to find your root cause. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the seminar, I passed out a sheet of paper, and as I also highlighted, I wanted today's seminar to be really practical. So the information that you're taking, you could actually start utilizing as soon as you left. And to address it again, menopause comes with over 60 different symptoms. And if we try to address each one individually, it can feel really overwhelming. And what I started to notice when I was working with women in my own clinic is the reality is a lot of these symptoms can actually be traced back to 4 root causes. And if we can address that root cause, we can actually relieve and eliminate multiple symptoms all at once. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And I also want to mention, if you are not in perimenopause yet, so you're premenopausal, this activity is still for you because the symptoms that you're generally experiencing now tend to get worse as you go through the experience. If you're in perimenopause, it's 100% for you. That's where these symptoms are starting. And definitely if you're postmenopause, we know these symptoms last 20 plus years. So everybody in the room that has ovaries, you're definitely welcome to take this quiz. So with the activity itself, we're identifying your root cause. And what I'm going to do is with each category, I'm going to list a number of symptoms. If you've experienced these symptoms in the past 3 months, I want you to write them down. If you have not experienced these symptoms, just leave it blank. And I can already hear whispers of everything's going to be me, right? We'll find out. So first category, we have hot flushes, night sweats, skin changes, puffy skin, joint pain, headaches, and migraines. So if you've experienced any of these symptoms in the past 3 months, I want you to take the time to write it down. And I will expand what these are. So starting off with hot flushes, I call them hot flush versus hot flash because I don't want to minimize the experience. A hot flush can last up to 4 minutes for a woman, and the onset can be so intense that they feel like they are having the onset of a panic attack. So it's not something to minimize. Night sweats, waking up in the middle of the night feeling absolutely drenched and saturated. A lot of my clients express the need to change their bedroom sheets. Skin changes, so this can be not just dry skin, but also itchy skin. Formication, not fornication. Formication is the itching and crawliness sensation of the skin as well. You can write that down. Puffy skin, this is like fluid retention. Joint pain, so aches and pains generally when we wake up in the morning that generally are relieved as we go throughout the day in our fingers or in our knees and hands. And then headaches and migraines. Now that we covered that first category, we're going to look at category number 2. Again, only write down the symptoms that you've experienced in the past 3 months. So brain fog, feeling flat, mood swings, trouble focusing, bloating, acid reflux, irregular bowel movements. So brain fog, I feel like this is generally one that most women going through peri or menopause know. You're basically going throughout your day and you feel like you're walking through a cloud. Feeling flat, so having no energy, even things like depressive symptoms. Mood swings, potentially waking up feeling stable, and then you get anxious, and then you get quite emotional later on. Trouble focusing, so having a hard time concentrating and finishing a task. Bloating, so eating some food and then feeling like your belly is expanding. Acid reflux, the burning sensation going up the esophagus. And then irregular bowel movements, so this could be constipation and or diarrhea. So now that we've talked about the second category, let's jump into the third. So in our third category, we have chronic fatigue, tired but wired, broken sleep or insomnia, muscle soreness, as well as morning hot flushes. So chronic fatigue is we potentially get 8 hours of sleep, we wake up in the morning, and then we have no energy for the rest of the day. Tired but wired is we go throughout our day feeling exhausted, but as soon as our head hits the pillow, it's racing at 100 kilometers an hour. Broken sleep or insomnia, so potentially struggling to fall asleep is the insomnia. Broken sleep, we may be able to fall asleep, but we wake up multiple times. Muscle soreness, this can be related to Matt pushing you extra hard in the gym, but not necessarily. If you did not work out, general muscle soreness, but if you did work out, you are taking a long time to recover, more than usual. So maybe your DOMS is generally 3 3 to 5 days. Maybe it's taking you 7+. And then morning hot flushes. This is specific time constraint of having a hot flush within the first 60 to 90 minutes of waking. This is actually called the cortisol awakening response. And we'll talk a little bit more about why it happens. And then we have in our last category, bladder changes, low libido, pelvic pain, prolapse, as well as vaginal dryness. So bladder changes, these are generally issues related to incontinence. So having issues in regards to a leaky bladder, whether that's in the gym, doing some jump roping, or just having a sneeze or a cough. Low libido, so obviously having a drop in intimacy with our partner. Pelvic pain, so in regards to pelvic pain, having irritation, whether it's itchiness, dryness, or pain during intercourse. Prolapse, the descending of our sex organs. We have vaginal dryness as well, and that can also cause in relation to pelvic pain too. So if you've experienced any of those symptoms in the past 3 months, I want you to take a moment to write it down. And I can see some of the pages filling up a little bit. And we'll talk about what these root causes are soon. So looking at the root cause behind category number 1, we'll go ahead and we'll reveal it, is related to inflammation. So you can write that at the top if you're wanting to understand if that was a main issue for you. That is related to inflammatory-based issues. Category number 2 is related to gut health. And a lot of women are quite surprised because they think, yeah, the bloating makes sense. Yes, the acid reflux makes sense. But brain fog? Really? Feeling flat? Mood swings? Absolutely. There's quite a big attachment to our brain and our gut, which is called the gut-brain axis. We actually start building neurotransmitters, and these are chemical messengers that help with our mood within our gut. Looking at category number 3, sleep and cortisol, is the root cause behind that third section there. And the last section is pelvic floor. So these are the 4 root causes behind these symptoms. And if we can address the root cause, we can help manage multiple symptoms all at once. And I do want to mention, you'll see this asterisk below. If you've struggled with weight gain during this experience as well, this is generally related to category 1, 2, and 3. And that's why I get women who come through my program a lot and they say, I have done everything to lose weight. I'm on a 1,200 calorie diet. I'm using Ozempic. I am working out more in the gym. Like, I get everything. Nothing's changing. And until we address the inflammation, the gut health, and the sleep and cortisol, that's where we can finally see change happening on the scale. And as you can see, that wasn't all 60 symptoms inclusive. I like to call the other ones that are outliers standalone symptoms. And these are symptoms like frozen shoulder, vertigo, as well as itchy ears. We won't be addressing those ones today, but they are found in my Thru Menopause online hub and education platform. But the major 4 that we're talking about, the pelvic floor, the inflammation, the gut health, the sleep and cortisol, they're located in my free menopause manual. And each one of you guys are going to receive that after the seminar today if you registered for it. So I don't want you to take copious amounts of notes in this next section, because realize you're going to get a copy of it anyway. Just absorb it, take it in. If you have questions, let me know. So we're going to jump into holistic treatment to understand your root cause. And I'd love to talk about all 4, but we might be here for a few hours. So, which I know you guys probably want to eat dinner later. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to understand what the root cause is for the root. So I'd like you to raise your hand based off of the majority of your symptoms. So we'll actually select which one was the most significant and dive deeper into that. So if you had inflammation as your top root cause, raise your hand. And if you had, let's say before, if you have all 4, just keep your hand raised the whole time. So yes, inflammation. So we have about 2, 4, 6, 8. If you had gut health as your major issue, yeah, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah, about 11, 12. That was a big one. If you had sleep and cortisol issues as your main issue, raise your hand. 2, 4, 6, 7, definitely. And pelvic floor health issues. 2, 4, 6. Yeah, some of the same ones on that one. So that's okay. Thank you for being vulnerable and also sharing. It seems like gut health and inflammation were probably the 2 that are the top. Is there one that you guys specifically want to look into tonight that you're interested in? Because I want to cover what would be most valuable to you. Those 2 primarily. We can pick one out of the 2. Is one more interesting than the other to you? Gut health, inflammation? Gut health? I'm hearing a little bit of whisper of gut health. We'll go. They both can interplay with each other. Absolutely. Honestly, the gut really does affect a lot of things. So we'll dive into the gut then. And that's generally, honestly, that's the one that I get the most when we do these workshops, is specifically gut health. Inflammation and cortisol can tie between the two, but yeah, it is primarily gut health. So we'll go ahead and we'll dive into the gut health protocol. And I really wanted to highlight, we're focusing primarily today on food, and how we can start nurturing our gut and reducing these menopause symptoms with food, because the reality is I could talk to you a lot about supplements and medication, but the fact is, and not medication, but blood work, but the fact is that you guys may not be able to practically apply that as quickly as possible or even utilize it. So that's why I'm focusing on this food first approach. And I do want to mention as well, as I'm explaining what foods can be beneficial for the gut, I don't know your medical history. I don't know if you have any chronic conditions. So please take that into consideration when you're applying it, and run it through your GP if you have any concerns. So let's go ahead and dive into the gut health protocol. As I mentioned, this is what you're going to be, and I already hear some sighs, alcohol, what? No. So we're going to be diving into the gut health protocol. And as I mentioned, it's a part of the Thru Menopause manual. So you don't have to take copious amount of notes. You don't have to take photos. Absorb it. And if you do have questions, we can talk deeper about it. But yes, let's look at gut health. So starting off with number one is alcohol. And I generally get a lot of sighs with this one. And the reality is, if we are dealing with gut-based issues, reducing our alcohol can be very beneficial. And the fact of the matter is, alcohol is a toxin. That's how our body ends up having to process it. And I wish it wasn't, because it is such a fun aspect of socialization in Australian culture. But alcohol itself is very irritating to the gut lining. It can increase something called intestinal permeability. So we actually have these tight junctions within the gut, and alcohol itself can damage it and widen these tight junctions, allowing endotoxins to enter into the bloodstream. So that's something in regards to our gut health, in regards to things like our microbiome diversity, we do not want to be introducing. And these can exacerbate symptoms such as worsening bloating, reflux, as well as irregular bowel movements. It can upregulate our inflammation. And a great way, if you're experiencing hot flushes, to start reducing them is actually dropping the alcohol consumption. It's within the guidelines of the Australasian Menopause Society. So it's not saying you can never have a drink again, but if you are dealing with inflammatory and gut-based symptoms, it can be very beneficial. Now, looking at number two, processed and refined grains. So packaged snacks, white bread, pastries, refined pasta, they all feed pro-inflammatory gut bacteria, and they can spike blood sugar. So as I mentioned, my mom was dealing with issues like type 2 diabetes as she was entering into menopause, and a lot of women struggle with insulin resistance during this time. So reducing our fine carbohydrate consumption can really be beneficial. And that blood sugar spike that leads to a blood sugar crash can worsen our mood swings, as well as our energy crashes as well. Looking at category number three, we also have artificial sweeteners. So sugar-based substitutes like aspartame, sucralose, saccharins, they can all disrupt our gut microbiome diversity, increasing cravings for higher sugar foods, as well as slow down gut motility, making issues like constipation worse. Now, moving into number four, we have dairy for sensitive individuals. And I do highlight for sensitive individuals because the reality is, as we go through menopause, food sensitivities can pop up. And the reason being is, as we go through hormonal changes during menopause, we can have a lower lactase enzyme production, and it can make dairy harder to digest. And this can lead to issues like bloating, cramping, diarrhea, and even contribute to low-grade inflammation. So potentially switching out dairy for plant-based products like almond. Also looking at, instead of having A1 casein, which is more inflammatory, moving to A2, can all be things to test trial during this transition. And then last but not least, we have gluten-containing grains for sensitive individuals. So wheat, barley, and rye, again for sensitive individuals, can irritate the gut lining. It can actually, for those who are sensitive, expand the tight junctions of the gut, exacerbating leaky gut, and it can upregulate a marker called zonulin. And so when we check for leaky gut, we can actually test that blood marker to see if that process is happening underneath the surface. That especially can lower our microgut biome diversity, contributing to the bloating, the brain fog, as well as the irregular stools. So I like to see how everyone's going in the room when I go over this. How are you guys doing in regards to avoiding these foods? Is anybody nailing them? Yeah? Apart from the alcohol, yes. Apart from the alcohol. That's fantastic. Now, moving into foods to include, this is where generally I have people scratching their heads. Like some of these may not potentially be in your daily routine and can be quite thought-provoking, something to add. So looking at foods to include, we're going to be starting off with eating 30 different plants per week. Has anybody ever heard this study before, or is this completely new? New. Okay, this is new information. So not necessarily. Eating the rainbow is really beneficial, but this is specifically a number placed off of how many plants we should be eating. And this is from the Gut Health Project that was done, a study done in the UK. In regards to this, what they actually did was they tested the microgut biome on individuals who were eating under 30 plants. And what they found was they had a almost 50% drop in microgut biome diversity. Versus those who are eating 30, they had a solid number of diverse gut microbiome diversity. That number is around 200 different diverse strains. And then if you were having over 30 plus, you really weren't much higher than anybody else. So you could be having 60, but that number in regards to microgut biome diversity did not double. So 30 was the standard. And this is actually something I get all of my clients to do at the beginning of their journey is write down how many different plants they're eating. And when I'm saying plants, it's not like a house plant. I'm talking about things like chia seeds, cashews, lettuce, those type of herbs like rosemary. These are all different types of plants, and we want that diversity of plants to create the diversity in our gut microbiome. Bit of a tongue twister. So this is going to help with regulating our immune system, improving our gut health, and even helping things with hormonal regulation. So 30 is the standard we want to aim for. And that's what I'd recommend you guys to do is write down how many you're eating throughout the week and challenge yourself to get that minimum dosage. Moving on to number 2, having bone broth. Does anybody incorporate bone broth into a weekly routine or ever heard of it before? No. Yes. Okay. Some have heard of it. Incorporate it, maybe not. But bone broth is really, really rich in collagen and glutamine, and both are really beneficial for helping repairing the intestinal lining, especially if we're dealing with issues like leaky gut. So therapeutic dosage would be 250 ml of bone broth in hot water, or for maintenance, having 3 to 4 cups per week. Now, one of my favorite brands of bone broth is Best of the Bone. You can actually purchase it from Woolies, and they slow cook their bones for up to 72 hours. That's going to get that really rich source of collagen and glutamine. Versus I've had some clients come to me and they say, oh, I got this Campbell's soup. It says that it's slow cooked, it's bone broth. And I look at the back and it's been cooking for 3 to 4 hours. I'm like, there's unfortunately nothing very nourishing in regards to that. You're going to get some water with some flavoring in it. We really want the slow cooked bones. So that's a good place to start to help with issues that can exacerbate our gut health, bone broth. Moving into number 3, we have ginger tea. So ginger tea stimulates digestive enzymes, can help upregulate our stomach acid, and we need stomach acid to break down our food, extract nutrients to help us absorb it properly. So it can help reduce inflammation as well with our gut lining, can help ease issues like nausea or sluggish digestion, and we're wanting to aim for 1 to 2 cups daily, ideally in between meals for best usage. And fresh is best. And letting that steep up for 5 to 10 minutes before drinking is how we'd end up consuming it. Now, number 4, we have prebiotic-rich foods. So has anybody heard the terms prebiotic and probiotic before? And do you guys know the difference between the two? Generally not. Most people have heard of them, but they don't really know what they are. So prebiotic-rich foods are foods that actually help feed the diversity of our gut microbiome. Probiotic-rich foods introduce new strains of bacteria into our gut. So prebiotic-rich foods like leeks, onions, garlic, asparagus, artichokes, and legumes, they contain fibers such as short-chain fatty acids that help feed the beneficial bacteria. We're wanting to consume at least 1 to 2 servings daily of these, like vegetables or legumes, 1 to 2 cloves of garlic, or about a half a cup of onions cooked or raw to help feed these healthy gut bacteria. Number 5, we have fermented-based foods, which are the probiotic sources. How many of you guys are eating sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir on a daily basis? Yes? not daily, but having them. At least you've had them. Some people have never had them. So absolutely, the minimum dosage we're actually wanting to have of fermented foods is 2 to 3 servings per day. And a serving isn't as much as you think. A serving is actually as small as a tablespoon. And when it comes to probiotic-based sources, the examples I showed are sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, unsweetened yogurt, again, if tolerated, unless you have like a lactose digestive issue. And we want cultures that are essentially alive in the sense of you get them and purchase them in a refrigerated state, ideally without any preservatives, because the reality is fermented foods are getting quite a bit of hype at the moment. And if you buy them shelf stable, like they're not refrigerated, the reality is they have to go through a pasteurization process, which kills bad pathogens, but it also kills the good pathogens. So all you end up eating is like tangy cabbage, which can be nice, but it's not going to add any benefit to the gut. So probiotic-rich foods is going to help support digestion and help regulate immune activity in the gut. From there, we also have resistant-based starchy sources. Some of you may have heard this, but may not have realized the value of it. So cooking and cooling potatoes helps create resistant starch. Green bananas, lentils, and oats contain resistant starches as well. And they actually create something and produce something called butyrate. When it comes to the gut microbiome, I like to call it like outer space. There's still not enough known about it. And the scientists who've gone into the gut microbiome have realized, though, there's a few strains of bacteria which are really, really beneficial to our health. Butyrate is one of the top ones. And I think over time, we might find out there's plenty more. But yes, cooked and cooled potatoes is a great way to get butyrate from our food. And you don't have to eat them cool. You can actually re-warm it up and it will already contain those resistant starches in it. Now, how many of you guys are nailing the foods to include? Maybe one of them, maybe one. Some, okay. So definitely things to improve, obviously. And especially since nearly 80% of the room was dealing with gut health, this is a really valuable starting place to get on top of it. Now, let's go ahead and dive in a little bit deeper and look at the lens of what it would look like to understand what's happening underneath the surface with your gut through functional blood work. And generally, when it comes to me talking about functional blood work, not very many people have heard this term before, and I like to set a bit of a foundation to it. So I have clients coming to me that say, I've been to my doctor regarding my menopause symptoms, let's say gut health. I've been having issues with brain fog and having mood swings and dealing with constipation and dealing with bloating. And he's looked at my blood work, or she's looked at my blood work, and she says, there's nothing wrong. I'm sorry, I don't see anything. There's nothing I can do for you. And it's not because your GP doesn't care. It's the fact is that when GPs look at your bloods, they're looking at conventional ranges, which is a really wide spectrum because what's in their toolkit is medication. So if they don't have medication to treat you with, there's unfortunately nothing in their toolkit to help support you. Now, looking at functional ranges is much, much more narrower. I start to look and monitor when things are outside of optimal, when you start to become at risk, when you're needing urgent attention. And this is generally where symptoms like the brain fog, the mood swings, the constipation, the diarrhea are popping up, and we're addressing them before they become even anything more serious. And looking at blood work itself, I really do want to highlight just the fact that just because your doctor says you can't be medicated for something doesn't mean there isn't something that's wrong and there isn't a way to address it. And this is what I would start doing in regards to looking at your blood work in the first place. So if we went through a one-on-one blood work journey, I put out a large net in regards to what we're looking for. And I know the screen is a little bit tiny, but we would start looking at things like kidney function, electrolyte function, protein function, complete blood count, looking at your iron levels, lipid, your thyroid, your hormone, as well as additional markers like B12, homocysteine to check for inflammation, folate, to get a really good idea about what's happening underneath the surface. And for gut health-based issues itself, these are ways that we can start looking at what's going on in regards to your gut. So things like CRP, which stands for C-reactive protein, we can actually start to understand if there's inflammation happening with the gut lining, which can be linked to issues like dysbiosis, which is an overgrowth of unbeneficial bacteria, leaky gut, or things like unresolved infections happening within the gut. As I mentioned, issues with zonulin, so having an increase in zonulin can give us insight into the tight junctions of your gut if it's lost its integrity and we're dealing with issues like leaky gut. Vitamin B12 as well as folate can give us insight if those levels are really low. If we're dealing with chronic gut inflammation, issues like SIBO, issues like low stomach acid, these are things that we can start addressing by reincorporating those rich types of foods or supplementing if necessary. Moving into other gut-based markers, looking at ferritin and iron studies can actually give us insight to the gut. If we have iron deficiencies, this can actually show we have impaired gut absorption. Looking at omega-3 fatty index, you may have heard of lipid levels like you have high cholesterol, HDL, LDL. This can actually give us insight into worsening inflammatory issues that can irritate the gut lining too. And then we have liver and detoxification markers like GGT, ALT, AST, bilirubin. They can show us signs in regards to our liver detoxification pathways being under burden, and we're needing more support to help with gut and reducing inflammation that's present there. So that's a bit of an understanding of what's going on in regards to the gut if you wanted to go deeper into it than just looking at the foods to avoid and foods to include underneath the surface. And to kind of pull this all together in regards to a client's journey I like to highlight so you can see a physical application of how you can turn around gut-based issues, I wanted to share with you a story of my client, Jo. And I actually have her, she actually just finished the program a few weeks ago, and I wrote down her testimony down on my phone, which I'm pulling it up now. So I wanted to give a story about Jo. So Jo actually came to me. She lives out in Goulburn in New South Wales. Have you guys heard of Goulburn? Yeah, it's the town in the middle of nowhere. So it's really, really cool that we connected. She's a powerhouse of a woman, Jo. She actually does so much for her community. She leads the agricultural center there. She's like building a whole community project with the university at this. She has like a environmentalist project at our house too for green energy. There's a lot going on. What I'm just trying to say is Jo is a business-minded woman that's very involved in the community. And when she came to me, she was having severe gut-based issues. And when I mean severe, she was diagnosed during menopause with celiac disease. She was also diagnosed with fibromyalgia, as well as a lactose intolerance-based issue. She was having acid reflux as well with her symptoms. So she couldn't eat any red-based sauces. So there was a lot going on in regards to her health. And I wanted to highlight, we actually took a recording of Jo's testimony, and I just wanted to read a little bit about where she was before and then how we triaged simple solutions utilizing her blood work to help her get on top of her gut health. So in her own words, Jo said, "I thought I was eating well, but I was just putting on weight and I felt like crap. I was having really bad hot flushes. I'd do my hair and I'd end up literally soaking wet, which was insane because I live in Goulburn where it's freezing cold. The protocols that I ended up doing with Victoria were so easy. The recipes have been really eye-opening and the food really nutritious. And it's given me not what only my body needs, but helped me stop feeling hungry all the time. I have more energy, more mental clarity, and this week my hot flushes do not even exist. What Vic has introduced to me has been life transforming. It's helped me through a horrible stage with my body. The difference in my mental clarity, my energy was almost immediate after the gut reset. And it's not one of those programs where you lose 5 kilos in a week and put it back on. It's a slow, steady way of correcting what's been going wrong. And I feel like I finally got my mojo back." And if you're wanting to hear Jo's story for yourself, we have a video on our website regarding her story in regards to healing her gut. And I really want to give you guys hope. If you are dealing with gut-based issues, you do have solutions to support to get on top of it. And looking at other ways that I've helped other women, we've lucky enough been had over 100% Google reviews, 5-star Google reviews, as well as over 100 plus successful transformations, including my mom. And I want to highlight, it's not just the women that are on the screen that I'm really proud of. I want to mention that I'm also very proud of you guys as well, which always leads this question mark, why? Because the fact of the matter is you are attending the gym in Yamba. I love the title of this gym, the gym. And the reality is that's adding nearly 7 years to your lifespan. Making sure that you're going to the gym consistently puts up to 7 years. The statistics show it. And it puts on bone density, it puts on muscle mass. You're like, yeah, I feel great. And unfortunately, if my mom had the knowledge in regards to what strength training would do for her, I really don't believe she would be in the place that she is today. But moving on past that, I do want to mention if you're wanting additional support in this journey, other than the free menopause manual, there are other resources available to you. I just launched about 2 months ago the Thru Menopause online program and community, and you guys get special access for joining me today, a 7-day free trial if you're interested in getting additional support. And what that kind of looks like is inside of the hub, we have root cause-based quizzes. So not just the 4 that we looked at today, but deeper in regards to things like looking at issues like leaky gut or sleep-based issues. Moving into science-backed protocols like the immune-based protocol, constipation, yeast infections, as well as even deeper into those 4 main root causes, looking at things like supplement and recipe lists to support it. We also have access to 50 different master classes. We do live Q&As every fortnight because it's great to have all this information, but if you don't feel confident in applying it, what's the point? And if you are interested in doing genetics and functional blood work in the future, that is available to you as well to understand what that might look like. So first of all, well, finally, I just want to say thank you guys for joining me in regards to taking an hour of your time to speak about something I am so passionate about. And before we finish today, I'd like to open up the floor to any questions to hear if you guys have any thoughts in regards to your own journey. If there's any burning questions that you have regarding menopause, I want to make sure those are answered before we leave. Yes, go ahead.
So, my period stopped about 8 years ago.
Yes.
But my symptoms of the hot flashes started 3 months ago.
Yes.
So my doctor prescribed anxiety tablets and onto the time tablets and stuff like that. They did jack shit. Now at the moment, we've gone to the tablets, menopause tablets,
Yes.
gel, which I've only taken 2-3 weeks of it. They said they won't show anything up until another couple of weeks. So just because I didn't get my periods, does that mean it's still menopause? I still get my menopause because I haven't had my periods for 8 years.
Yep. So your question is, are you in menopause?
Yeah,
You are in menopause. Yes.
So
100%. So absolutely. If 365 days, if you haven't had your period, you are clinically diagnosed as being in menopause. And that is the way to diagnose it. But if you really wanted to go into the nitty gritty of doing potential blood testing, which isn't technically necessary, you could look at hormones like follicular stimulating hormone, even estrogen being 8 years past, they would be at its lowest levels baseline. So it's not recommended to get blood testing in peri because hormones fluctuate so rapidly, but you are definitely in menopause. And the fact that you're experiencing symptoms 8 years past is not necessarily shocking. A big aspect of regards to hot flushes later on is increases inflammation.
I didn't get them
Before, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. So I know we didn't go into the inflammation protocol, but looking at markers like homocysteine, that's a big inflammatory marker, which can be dysregulated by having low levels of folate, B12. Those are all things that can increase the inflammatory process and make these things like hot flushes get worse. And it's generally something I see quite dysregulated as women go through menopause, especially post. Yes. So good question. Yeah. Yes.
So I went through menopause at 40 when I started. By 42, they put me onto Vivial, what was called a tablet. And
Yes.
How long can you be on tablets?
Like hormonal therapy? Yeah. Technically, the regulations say that if you started within the menopausal time period, within 10 years of turning menopausal, you can be on them for life. Would I want to be on them for life? No. Yeah.
Now, I've gone off the tablet and started the gel, but
Yes.
I've sort of only gone half of what you said with the gel thing.
Yep, absolutely. It really depends on what your symptoms are. And I don't know if you want to actually talk about them in front of everybody, but that actually, based off of the symptoms, you can start addressing what that symptom is to reduce the issue. So when you come off of it, you're less likely to have it. And to give you an example, we didn't go over inflammation tonight, but I have a client whose name is Charlene. She actually was getting debilitating hot flushes. She was about 3 years post-menopause, and she was on HRT. They had a patch shortage in Melbourne, and the doctor said, I'm sorry, we don't have anything for you. And she's like, I cannot live without this. She actually got in touch with me because her friend was my friend and was working in the intensive care unit. And hot flush symptoms is an inflammatory driver. When we address the root cause behind her inflammation, her hot flush has disappeared in 6 weeks. So it is possible. I know that a lot of women think that HRT is the only solution, but it's only one solution. And it is a tool that can be really good for it. And the reason being is what's happening within the brain when we have a hot flush is estrogen itself decreases the sensitivity of a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. So it triggers body temperature changes and shifts through things like inflammation. So instead of having a wide zone to handle and cope with changes with the body like inflammation, that zone narrows. So smaller things like if we are having, like I said, higher homocysteine, if we're having too many drinks with the girls and that inflammatory load starts to increase, that's going to spike that inflammation post. But if we can naturally drop that inflammation by supporting different blood levels, by reducing our inflammatory load, we may not necessarily need to be dependent on that for the long term. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And technically, like at the moment, there is no cutoff date. They do not recommend starting HRT 10 years after menopause at the moment. That's where the science is at, because that can increase your risk of strokes and as well as issues in regards to blood clotting, those types of issues. So so at the moment, you can be on it, but it depends on if you want to be on it, and there's ways to get off of it if that's the case. Yes, definitely. Any other questions? You're really good.
With the 30 plus, fruit and veg or whatever, is
yes.
that like, can be cooked, can be raw, can be
yeah.
juice? Could you do juice?
Yes, 100%. Big blend. And one of my favorite ways to do it is I like to do a nut medley. So I'll end up doing like pine nuts and pumpkin seeds and even things like flax seeds. And I'll mix those all together and I'll actually put it on my salads. So that's a way that I can get 8 different plants to help with that diversity. So yeah, good question. Any other questions? No, it's okay. If you do have, that's what I'm here for. But you're welcome to ask any questions. I get questions all the time of does being on like IVF, having issues with fertility, is that going to affect going into menopause later on? Any questions? If there's any questions that come to mind, feel free to ask.
The majority of concerns that get pointed to me, and not really talking about menopause, but just stuff that stands out, is people coming into it that aren't necessarily hard into it. So it's a brain's hard into it, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of women are like, 40, 45, in that space or whatever, just about to kick into it.
Yes.
What I found, and I don't know if you know, like I'm doing testosterone therapy at the moment through it's being coached, I'm not just random doing it, some do the gym. And it took me a long time to pull the trigger on doing something. I mean, I've got to give myself a needle 3 times a week, so it's not the funnest thing in the world. But the side effects were so much shitter than putting a needle in my arm. And since I've been doing it, even though I don't enjoy doing it, and that won't help me, is pulling the trigger when you notice stuff's not right.
Yeah.
Don't wait until it gets fucking terrible before you start making decisions about your gut health, and your body weight, and your fitness levels, and the amount of different foods you have in your diet because you don't like to eat kale or some shit, whatever it is. Like so the point I'm trying to say is like how do people make that decision? Because I think the hardest part is
I just cancelled my appointment on Tuesday because I was going to the doctor to talk about symptoms.
Yes.
So I'd wait till I come here.
Yes.
I'm booking it.
Cancelling it out.
Yes.
They pushed it out until next Tuesday for me, but I just wanted to come here first so then
The other problem-
helps me.
Absolutely.
I don't want to go HRT.
Yeah,
the other
100%.
problem is one more in addition, I think probably better thing to touch on is, as having been to the doctor for different things, there's a big, like you said, there's a big gap between what they can help you with, what they have specific knowledge in, because general practitioners over a referral system, they're not usually highly trained in a particular area. not saying that some aren't, some are. They're a referral system for the most part. They're either referring you to medication or someone who knows something more. So someone like Victoria is actually almost a first point of call, because if you need medical intervention, then she's going to point you in that direction. She's not going to say, "Oh no, doctor, unless you can fix it elsewhere." So anyway, so
No, I really,
like,
absolutely.
like, so when do people make decisions and how they make decisions? That's probably what I'm asking.
Yeah, 100%. As we kind of saw in regards to how long menopause symptoms can last, as soon as you start to experience symptoms, you should start addressing it. And that's why I really encouraged you guys when you are doing the quiz. It doesn't matter if you are premenopausal, getting on top of your symptoms now is very important, because the reality is our body just isn't as resilient as we go through this transition. Things that seem to be minor just tends to compound. And that's what I really noticed with my mom's journey herself, is the fact that yeah, weight gain, it didn't seem like a big issue until she started having bulging discs, and then she had osteopenia, and then it all compounded downhill. So when you start seeing those symptoms pop up, start addressing it. Don't let it sit for years on end, and then it actually becomes a chronic condition. Because that's what I generally see with women is I get women most of the time postmenopausal that have been suffering with it for 10 years. And then by that point, they start having thyroid issues and they start having autoimmune conditions. And then it all starts to compound more seriously when we could have intervened 5-year plus and gotten on top of those issues. So I really value that, Matt. And thank you for sharing that. Actually, Andy and I were talking recently about when it comes to doctors, it's not that they're negligent. They just don't have education in regards to this type of information or nutrition. We were looking at some of the statistics, and PTs who get a Cert 3 or Cert 4 get more education regarding nutrition than a doctor does in their 8 years, because they only have like a 4-week course in nutrition. They're focused on medication. That's what they can give to you. So realize that is their sole ability in regards to being able to support you, their sole tool. It's not that they don't care, it's just that's what they have in their toolkit. 100%.
Most PTs, and myself, but anyone, they learn more because it's like directly related to their job.
Yeah.
Like they're like getting results is weight loss and strength building or whatever, and it all comes down to food.
Yeah.
Other than training.
Yeah.
So they'll always learn more. So they'll do it in their course, but that's minor.
Yeah.
What most, like I've done ridiculous amount of nutrition training, not to like specific stuff, but just more reading about more different stuff. So all the stuff we talk about is
hitting the nail on the head.
No, it's like absolutely not.
Yeah, absolutely. So any last burning questions? Yes, go ahead.
I'm really a bit confused. I'm probably the oldest person here, and I started going through menopause a long time ago.
Yes.
And I've got Hashimoto's, I've had a prolapse operation, and all of these things I've dealt with separately. I've never seen them presented as somehow being interconnected by things that we can address, not just through medication.
Yes.
I mean, I've been on HRT for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I did try getting off it, but immediately the symptoms came back. So I'm still on it.
Yes.
And I don't want to be on it when I'm 80.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Definitely. And when it comes to that specific journey, that's where I think functional blood work really comes into play, because it helps understand what's happening underneath the surface, what's driving these issues.
How do you separate it? I mean, people say, oh, I've got aches and pains, oh, it's old age. I mean, I went through a process every time I went to the doctor. Oh, it's because you're getting older.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything about that.
Yes.
And you tend to just put up with it.
Yeah, 100%. I think a big aspect is when it comes to the menopause transition, it is quite pro-inflammatory. Estrogen levels can be a safe buffer. And the fact is HRT is nice. It can be helpful in some aspects, but it's not helpful in all aspects. And as you're saying, it's an interplane of aging. Menopause is a aspect of the aging process. So how you separate the two, I don't generally separate the two out. I cast that wide net to see what's happening underneath the surface. And if menopause is one aspect that's exacerbating it, we're not necessarily addressing the menopause, we're addressing the root cause, and menopause itself has left us more vulnerable. Does that make sense? Yes. Yeah.
Drawing all the threads together.
Yes, drawing all the threads together. That's exactly right. So, a great question. I want to let you guys know I'll be hanging out after. So if you do have any more personal questions, you're welcome to ask. But thank you so much for your time, and feel free to take that sheet of paper with you. As you know, the 7-day trial for the Menopause Hub, if you're wanting further education, is there for you. We also have the opportunity, if you are interested in learning more about functional blood work, we have a free 20-minute call available to you guys that you're welcome to book in, so you can share your stories and I can guide you to free resources or paid resources if that's what you're wanting support in. So, but I appreciate your time. Thank you guys so much for joining. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Just thanks, Victoria. You know, like it's, you know, it was just odd that you messaged me, like, it came
Yeah.
out of nowhere. It was like so relevant at the time. I'm like, all these
Yeah.
like, you know, Claire the other day.
Yes.
The girl was working, and she's been on my case about strength training, and I'm like, hey, talk to me. No, like you got to do it, you know. Like,
Yeah.
But it's just funny because it's like it's becoming a bigger topic.
Yes.
People are talking about it a lot more, and it's just a bit more in the media at the moment. I don't know if you've seen that, but
Absolutely.
it goes through sort of ebbs and flows of being popular to talk about or whatever. So it was just ironic that you messaged me out of nowhere. So
Yeah.
I didn't find it.
No, no, absolutely. We actually came to Yamba because we have family that lives here. So, yeah. Actually, my sister-in-law, her sister used to go to school with Matt. So it's a small world.
His brother is married to Tasha's sister.
Yes. Yes. Molly, yeah. So it's a small world, essentially. Yeah. So no, it's been a privilege, Matt. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my passion. So yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know. That's clear. Oh, thanks for coming, Shelley. I appreciate it. Absolutely. Yeah, feel free to. Yeah, for a free one-on-one consult. Yeah, absolutely. That will take you to it, and I'd love to have a chat with you.
Do those for you. If you just go in and say, I want a functional blood work, will they do that?
For your doctor, they probably won't know what that is. But that you can order blood work with them. It's generally like general panels, but they won't know how to dissect it like we do. It would be more looking at, let's say you had high cholesterol, they'd be like, oh, how about statins? We'll go ahead and put you on that. Versus how can we actually balance your omega-3 levels to increase your good cholesterol and drop that bad? Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying about blood work? Sorry, I was listening to
Yeah, no,
I guess
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're obviously limited with facilities around here.
Yeah.
That's literally
So
what I was thinking of just.
yeah, you can order through the doctor, but you can also order through InstaScript. InstaScript is a private organization I generally go through because the doctor can make it quite hard to get the blood work back. They'll be like, I want you to come in and I'm going to print it out. And then you end up paying 2 doctor visits for nothing. Versus InstaScript, we can end up ordering it and then you get the blood work pathology script in